You are the Director of Community Policy.
The Affordable Housing Alliance is a membership organization of over 40 developers. So in my role, everybody who's interested, who has a thought, who needs data to really move the needle in these initiatives, I bring them to the table. We have the necessary conversations.
Do you guys offer training that kind of sort of talks about, kind of sort of educate those folks that are having the heart to for their first time buyer home?
Has over 120 housing professionals, lenders, real estate agents, housing counselors, and their sole mission is to close the racial wealth gap in Columbus through homeownership.
Anna, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you coming through. Anna Teye-Kasongo, you work with the AHA, Affordable Housing Alliance in Central Ohio, where you are the Director of Community Policy.
Yes, I am.
So tell us a little bit about it. What is it exactly that you do?
So the Affordable Housing Alliance is a membership organization of over 40 developers, everybody in affordable housing land, nonprofit, for-profit, committed to closing our affordable housing gaps. So in my role, everybody who's interested, who has a thought, who needs data to really move the needle in these initiatives, I bring them to the table. We have the necessary conversations. And then also within that role of creating tables, we have a smaller coalition called Convergence Columbus, which, has over 120 housing professionals, lenders, real estate agents, housing counselors, and their sole mission is to close the racial wealth gap in Columbus through homeownership. So I wear both hats. I serve the alliance and the partnerships that they're creating, and then I also provide operational supports for this coalition of housing professionals.
So tell us a little bit about that coalition specifically. So it's a group of realtors, the developers that are kind of sort of get together. How did that idea was put together, or you just joining that something that has been put together already?
So the Mortgage Bankers Association started this Convergence initiative back in 2020. It started in Memphis, getting together the housing professionals there to close the homeownership gaps in Memphis. And then when they came to Columbus, and why Columbus is because we have the second largest gap between Black and white homeownership of other metropolitan cities in the nation. So when they were looking for a partner on the ground who would take on this convergence idea, the John Glenn School of Public Affairs at OSU, as well as the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, grouped together, collected the data, started having conversations, and then when they were looking for a host organization, the Affordable Housing Alliance raised our hand because we have naturally an equitable homeownership arm to the work that we do, and the work of Convergence just fit very closely in it. So Convergence Columbus launched in 2021, and then the latest city is Convergence Philadelphia, which launched last year, I believe in March. And it's not done. So other cities are interested in building their own convergence. So now there's a Convergence Collaborative where new sister cities will be joining the movement. Yeah.
Where does that passion come from?
The passion is rooted in the fact that in this country, homeownership is the number one way that people build generational wealth. And the understanding is, especially Black households have been barricaded from accessing this generational wealth building asset for years through redlining, through restrictive covenants, through intentional policies by the federal government, and intentional practices by lending institutions, real estate agencies, the list goes on. So we understand that, back in 1968, when the Fair Housing Act passed, which is supposed to take away this discrimination, the gap between white and Black homeownership in Franklin County was about 24%. Okay, fast forward to 2023, which is the latest data that we have, that gap is at 32%. It increased. But again, like I just mentioned, the Fair Housing Act passed over 60 years ago. So why has that gap increased rather than decreased? And it's because policy alone is not going to rectify years of discrimination, years of barricading people having access to fair lending. There needs to be intentional programs and policies on the ground that make a difference. And there needs to be education for a community communities that have been left behind. So I think that's the passion, and we don't want households to be left behind.
Okay. You're originally from Ghana.
I am. Anna from Ghana is what people know me as from college. Yeah.
How long you been here?
So I've been here for 12 years, came in 2012, 18-year-old who wanted to explore the world.
Right.
I didn't know what I was signing up for. I came to Granville, Ohio to go to Denison University. Yeah.
It changed a lot, right? Ohio has changed since.
It definitely, especially Columbus, because I remember coming in 2012 and people saying, Columbus is the next big city, right? Next big city. I'm like, I'm a city girl from Accra. I don't know what you guys are talking about. But
right.
Behold, here is Columbus. Here is all the growth. Here is all the employment opportunities. And again, as we're growing, especially the people like myself who are attracted to Ohio because of the affordability, because it's seen as family friendly, because of the education opportunities. As we're growing, our housing is not growing with us. And because our housing is not growing with us, the potential for homeownership seems further and further out of reach for everyday people.
So now, the immigrant community here in Columbus also is growing. So, I'm originally from Somalia, and there's a large population from Somalia here. But also, in Africa in general, it's growing. All right, I think so. I want to touch on that a little bit about how are you seeing your research based on the number of folks that are from Africa that are actually becoming homeowners. How are you getting those data?
So what I was going to say is the data we have is not specifically for foreign-born nationals who are homeownership.
Okay.
Because how it's collected is mainly by race. That's if people even declare their race.
Okay.
But what we have the knowledge of is from our housing counseling agencies. The people that they do counsel, a lot of the people that they counsel are foreign-born who want to understand how to access credit. How do I build a credit score? How do I navigate this new market? Because many people come to this country, they don't know the credit system. I didn't.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, so I was going to talk more about qualitatively how we've measured foreign-born nationals who are entering homeownership.
How do you measure it?
So yes, we have housing counseling agencies, especially the HUD certified, certified by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Mm-hmm. There are over 4 in Columbus, and they talk about how a large group of their people who go through their homebuyer education are foreign-born nationals who are eager to learn about the credit system here in the United States. When I think about it, when I first came, I had no idea what credit was because growing up, I grew up in a family house that was built in the 90s before I was even born. And my parents told me, don't buy anything that you don't have the money for. Right. Never be in debt because that's seen as taboo. But in this country, debt and credit are the ways that you get access to mortgages, to business loans, to even, where you live as an apartment or even student loans. So a lot of people are coming to this country without that foundation, and they are eagerly searching for that information because they come to understand to thrive in this society, you need a credit score. You need to prove to a lending institution that you have the ability to repay that debt. And the only way to do that is to get into some level of debt and manage it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we often see when the economy goes back, it affects a whole lot of people.
Right.
Because it's based on, like you said, credits and debts and all that stuff.
Right.
But, people that are from immigrants that are coming here, they don't have that knowledge or they don't have that understanding of what credits, like you and I didn't understand. When I came here, I'm like, what's credit card?
Why do I need it? It was scary to me.
So
I've been here for 12 years. I've only had a credit card within the past 3 years.
Okay.
Because at some point I'm like, okay, I'm in this country longer than I thought. Let me get a credit card. And now I own a home 3 years later.
Okay.
So it has worked in my favor. But I got that credit card knowing that I had to be responsible with how I used it. And that's where our housing counseling agencies, which are nonprofit organizations that give this service for free, that's where they come into play. And that's why they have a seat at our table as we're trying to create solutions for homeownership.
So early on, we were talking about some of the research that, or some of the data that you guys collect, oftentimes that people don't specify their race.
Yes.
So how do you determine, or how do you differentiate communities like immigrants versus, folks that were born here?
Yes. So when you fill out a mortgage application, it does ask if you're not a U.S. citizen, if you're a permanent green card holder, what other form of documentation that you have. So that's the type of question that the lender will ask you. And by providing that information, then we can decipher, okay, then this applicant who identified as Black is also a green card holder or is also on work authorization. And we can assume that they're foreign born.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did that affect them in terms of like getting the right credits, the right mortgage?
So that's definitely a question for a lender.
Right.
What I do know from the lending partners we have, they want to know that their investments will be repaid.
Right.
So obviously for certain statuses that are here longer, that have permanency of residence, it works in their favor. The mortgage application, the mortgage process works better in their favor than if they're only here temporarily. Because at the end of the day, from the lender standpoint, I want to make sure you are paying back.
Right. And I think that's where I feel there is room for improvement, right? There are some folks that are actually have the ability to pay back, but certainly they don't have that credit, they don't have that track record that shows them that they can go ahead and pay, which makes it a little bit longer. But at the same time, it's that education that kind of sort of make the difference for the folks that are really interested in making it happen.
And I'll even touch on that too.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. In fact, like I said, Convergence Columbus is all about finding innovative solutions. And we recognize that the credit model doesn't serve everybody. Right. In fact, not only foreign-born nationals, but even communities of color who, like I just mentioned, back in only about 40 or 50 years ago, there were actual laws put in place to not give them equal access to credit. So if you don't have that generational access to credit, you're probably not going to have the best credit score by the time you're ready to purchase a home. Right. But you're probably working a good job, or you have a savings, or you have the literacy, the financial literacy to repay that debt. But so part of the conversations we've had is how else can a bank, qualify somebody? Credit score alone does not tell the full story. Your credit history may not tell the full story, but your ability to pay your rent on time for the past 2 years, and the fact that you earn good income, or even the fact that your savings may look a certain way, shouldn't the bank consider that in their qualification process? And some institutions do, but again, the education is needed.
Right. Interesting. Your friend Carly was talking about an idea you guys kind of tossing around and you're playing with, where a nonprofit that will allow you to kind of sort of play the bankroll, give you the funds, and at the end of your conclusion of your loan, or if you want to sell your house maybe 10 years, 15 years down the road, then you will be a portion of that interest. A portion of that gain.
Right.
So is that something that's coming to life, or?
Yes. So Convergence Columbus, did a lot of research. It's called a shared appreciation mortgage, and it exists in places like California, Arlington, Virginia, Colorado. So we had a webinar with those, organizations and asked the hard questions. We want this to be another solution. We don't want to take away from somebody's dream of homeownership. But as you mentioned, the idea is, so we give you down payment assistance. So that may be, anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000, depending on your appetites. And at the time that you sell the home, it's to get your foot in the door. By the time you sell the home or refinance, you pay back that $60,000 plus a percentage share of the appreciated value of your home. That way it goes back into the pool of funding to help the next household. Because again, we want to have a more recyclable resource. We've done so many down payment assistance programs that have worked. This year alone, in February, we launched a $1 million program for Black, Latinx, and other underserved or underrepresented communities who have been barricaded access to credit. And that $1 million disappeared in 5 months. Oh, wow. And we served 70 households. That $1 million caught the attention of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Cincinnati that says, I see your $1 million. I'm going to add $5 million for first generation home buyers. And that has served 160 households. It just closed a few days ago. Oh, wow. So again, in 1 year, $6 million, and that's just the two programs I'm talking about, have helped the community. But now we have to go back to square one to provide more funding. This shared appreciation mortgage is an ability to, again, have a more renewable resource. You were asking, where is it now? So we've created the terms and conditions. We're now in the process of putting it through legal review and then getting investors to see if this is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Is that locally invested or permission?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would be Franklin County focus with Franklin County partnerships. We are looking at some national partners as well, but adding more tools to the toolbox is what we do. There's no one size fits all solution.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are doing excellent jobs. Carly told me that it's just only the two of you guys that are making a big difference.
Right. Yep, just the two of us.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You guys definitely paving the way for and helping a lot of households, a lot of families and stuff like that.
Thank you.
You guys work with a lot of different background people. And those can be a challenging too. So how do you bridge that gap? What is it like to kind of sort of wear different hats in different ways?
Right. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm a Ghana girl who found herself in Ohio and in the US for the past 12 years. So I think part of how I've navigated the US is learning about people's backgrounds, is seeing them and their concerns from where they are. Everybody fundamentally has a baseline issue that they care about. And we all actually care about the same things. Even in the topic of housing, which can be so controversial and sometimes politicized, everybody wants a place to lay their head where they can consistently depend on as they go to work, as they raise their families, as they, go to school. And everybody wants their neighborhoods to be safe. So regardless of where you stand on what spectrum, when you get people to understand the underlying problem, what is your underlying concern, then you start seeing more synergy. You start seeing people realize that I actually agree with that person versus the last time we had this conversation, I couldn't see eye to eye with them. Talking about, closing the racial homeownership gap, it's a similar conversation. So sometimes people think lenders and real estate agents and housing counselors, they're never on the same page sometimes because they each have their incentives. They each have their reason for doing this work and getting people into homes. But in Convergence, yes, some of our conversations have been a little contentious and we've had to, come to equal standing. But the idea is, at people's core, the joy you get when you have served somebody who thought about homeownership, didn't think it was possible, and now they have the keys to their first home. Whether you're a lender, real estate agent, or housing counselor, the fact that you were a part of that process, you want more of that. It brings some kind of fire to the work that you're doing. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. Yeah. In the meantime, I'm thinking that how do you measure, the Affordable Housing Act, back in however long that was ago, from 24% to 32%, right?
Yes.
So it kind of sort of increased a little bit.
Yes.
So what are you guys doing, or how can people see the difference that has been made? I'm just talking about in general, not specifically to AHA.
Right.
So what are the goals, or what do you see, or what do you like to see that kind of sort of help and measure that gap to be closed down?
For Convergence Columbus, we want to see a gross and net increase in homeownership. So how many mortgages, loan originations were created specifically to Black and minority households? We also want to see the community tap into homebuyer education. So how informed are they about the process? So
are you guys doing that education?
Yes. Okay. So the housing counseling agencies who are part of the group provide that education. Many of them said that since Convergence has been active, that they've seen an uptick in the people who are in their homebuyer education classes. That's a great sign that people are getting more informed. We also want the communities that we serve to see a trusted advisor in the community. And by trusted, the reason we focus on that is because if we're talking about abuses and discrimination in the past, or somebody whose uncle, was given a predatory loan and lost the home that they worked so hard to save for, trust is a big component in why people are not taking that leap of faith and going into homeownership. So to tackle the trust gap, how we're measuring that is bloom614.org. That is our one-stop shop homeownership resource that celebrates, supports, and brings transparency and guidance along every step of the homeownership journey for Columbus's Black and minority communities. It is a website, but not just a website that's selling you homeownership. It is encouraging you and educating you and celebrating you. It is linking you to down payment assistance that you didn't know was in existence that could get you into your home. It's connecting you with practitioners who have gone through racial equity training through Convergence, so that you know that you're being served by somebody who understands, or who at least has the heart to understand you. It's using colorful visuals like a journey map so that on every step you know, okay, I start here. Literally, there's a button that says start here, and I navigate through every part of the homeownership journey. And at the very end, there's confetti, and I have resources to maintain the home through home repair, through weatherization services, through estate planning and foreclosure prevention. So that's Bloom 614. And again, the whole heart of it is to tackle the trust gap, is to demystify the process. There's so many misconceptions about homeownership, again, lack of knowledge, and it's meant to correct or to make some progress towards fixing those issues.
Okay. No, that seems that it's informational that's available to people that who really wanted to see that, okay, what has been done and how to track it, and in terms of like closing that gap. Right. But in some might argue and say that, hey, what you just described is kind of sort of colorful. It might not be the necessary reality at the back behind closed doors. So you did mention that racial equity training. So talk about a little bit about that. Did you actually, do you guys offer training that kind of sort of talks about, kind of sort of educate those folks that are having the heart to, lend folks that for their first time buyer home?
Yes. So just last month in November, we had 40 lenders, real estate agents, and housing counselors. They met at the Bexley Public Library for 3-hour training on implicit bias. Why implicit bias? Mm-hmm. Well, because on one hand, the data shows us that Black mortgage applicants are denied because of weak credit history or high debt to income ratio.
What can we do? You mentioned something interesting, because you said that when you guys did that research, you found the number of Black folks that are buying a home to begin with, it's low. These are not 40, 50. These are like 120 people that are actually making a year, right? So now, what do you think the underlying issue is that, or do you guys, or that's like above your scope in the sense of, what kind of a research that you wanted to do, or if you want to even get into the minds of those folks?
So yes, what is behind that is the work that we do. And I think the conversations that we have in the rooms with all these professionals, it gives us some clarity. I've heard stories of people saying, I've never seen homeownership in my family. None of my family members own a home. So how is it possible for me to accomplish that? Or I've been foreclosed upon in the past. Let's think about 2008. I've lost my home. Yeah. Is it possible for me to get back into the marketplace? Or for our young millennials or our Gen Z and recent graduates, right. I'm looking at the housing prices right now. I can't afford my rent, let alone save enough money to purchase a $335,000 home in Columbus.
And that's minimum.
Which that's the median sales price. Yeah. So the stories differ, but they all paint the picture, or they color the lines for us to understand. Maybe that's what's going on from the home buyer's side, but from the lender or from the real estate agents, everybody has a box that they have. And if you check the box, great. Here's the mortgage, here's the house, here's the keys, go off. But if you don't check the box, how many people are willing to sit with you and figure out ways to work with your situation? Mm-hmm. Now, the people at Convergence Columbus, they've made it very clear, we are willing to work with the person, but that's not everybody, which is why Convergence Columbus has an open door policy. Anyone who's interested in being a part of the solution can join in, so we can help you see between the lines, maybe look in the gray area and find out how can you so qualify this person, even if they don't check the box that you're used to using, for
in
people.
order for you to approve it.
Exactly.
And how is that helping the affordable housing in generally speaking?
Very good question. So homeownership, people see homeownership as like outside of the housing conversation, because let's get people into stable housing first before we talk about getting them into a mortgage.
Okay.
But the thing is, they're intertwined, because when specifically in Central Ohio, we're not building as much affordable housing as we should be. I'm sure Carly mentioned that over the past 5 years, we have lost 47,000 affordable homes alone. And that means people who, are your clerks or social security officers or even nurses who need a home that is maybe $1,000 and below to rent, they can't find it. Instead, they have to go for the $1,200 or the $1,500, where they're $1 a month home, and you're spending more than 30% of your income to afford rent. What time do you have to save? What monies do you have to save, let alone prioritize childcare and transportation? So the idea of homeownership being part of the conversation of affordable housing is, the more affordable housing we are building, the more people are able to save and not have to make difficult decisions, so that they can prioritize buying a home. They can prioritize getting credit worthy, so working on their credit, getting out of debt, because now they have more flexible spending to make that happen. So I can't talk about homeownership without talking about our affordable housing crisis, and the fact that we need to be intentional about not only building more affordable options, but also making sure we're building enough to drive down the cost of homes. Property taxes are not increasing for no reason. Home prices are not $335,000 in Columbus for no reason. It's because of lack of supply. And when there's increased demand, lack of supply, economics will tell you the prices will go up. And now nobody can, whether you're Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, a new American, foreign born, can afford homeownership, which, like I said, is one of the main keys that people build generational wealth in this country.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the affordable housing crisis is just, we're at the tip of it, right? So it's, getting close to getting to that avenue. We're not there yet in a way that other cities are there, or other cities have experienced such a challenging way to recover from. But I think we are approaching that avenue, and hopefully. So what are the policymakers? What are they doing about it?
So for the city of Columbus specifically, Columbus City Council has really championed housing. They literally have a legislative package called Housing for All, which goes from renter protections, tenant protections, going against discrimination like source of income. So a landlord has to accept however you are paying your rent and cannot discriminate against you, all the way to things that they're still proposing and still voting on, like a wholesaler registry. For those who are unaware, there's a problem in Columbus where, people are getting phone calls from people. I don't know who you are, but you say you're going to give me $5,000, $50,000 for my house. And if I'm at risk for foreclosure, or if I'm behind on my property taxes, I may be desperate enough and sell my house to you without fully understanding what you're doing with my house. So you have people buying out houses and being a middleman for external investors. And there's no way to monitor this activity now. There's no way to track what this is. And we find that, especially in communities of color, neighborhoods of color, that this activity is on the rise. So the city of Columbus said, hey, let's create a registry so that we can at least know who these actors are, and that they have to disclose to whoever they're calling that this is who I am, and this is actually what I'm going to end up doing with your property. So you are better informed as to whether you want to sell to them or not. That's just one example. There's a lot of predatory lending that's going on. That people are, like I said, selling their homes without realizing that they're being undercut.
Yeah, and we see that ads throughout Facebook, throughout
Cash for homes.
Exactly, cash for home, and through the intersection or pretty much anywhere. And those are, they're trying to take advantage of the underserved communities.
Right.
And some of them might be first-time buyer home too, as well, that are just not able to continue that.
But sorry, I also, without even forgetting, this year alone, the city of Columbus made a huge first step towards addressing our affordable housing crisis through Zone In. That was the first phase of their zoning code update from the 1950s. I know Carly mentioned that
she did
as
mention
well.
that, absolutely.
And that I actually had the privilege of speaking from the perspective of a homeowner, because a lot of people, when they're thinking about zoning, they're like, okay, it's building affordable housing, it's building high rises, or it's building gentle density. But I came from the perspective of a new Black homeowner who just purchased her home last year, and how easy the process was for me. But my friends,
how easy was it for you?
It took me 45 days. My husband and I, from the time we thought about it to the time we found a home we could afford, that was just 45 days. And instead of saying, oh, let's pat ourselves on the back and high five, let's go on, I turned around and told my friends, like, hey, have you thought of homeownership? And they tried. And it took them 6 months. It took them a year. Oh, wow. It took them more time to find what they could afford, because the options were so limited, because the prices were so high, because the condition of the homes that they were looking at were so outdated. I mean, the repairs alone would have, bankrupted them. Right. So when I spoke at Zone In, I said, hey, let's not only focus on the renter populations and what this can do for affordable rents. Let's look at those like myself who are entering the housing market to purchase and who feel like that's impossible because we're not building enough to drive down the cost of home, and we're not building enough to have new inventory that people can feel proud of to be their first home that they're purchasing.
It's interesting because if I'm a business person and I'm a developer and I wanted to build an area where I feel like I want to get more for my bucks, then what it's on the way that is regulating me to say that, okay, well, hey, certain things you cannot do and certain things you can do. Zoning is one of it. Right. But in terms of me getting more for my buck, what is getting in the way?
For a developer?
Yeah.
I mean, the zoning is a huge part of it. It's also making sure that you can afford the construction. I mean, the list goes on, but the idea is the more incentives, the more subsidies that are provided for developers, the faster they're able to complete projects, the faster they're able to meet the needs of the communities who need more housing, who they have identified, need more housing. I always encourage people, like, if you are in the developer space, to really explore the Affordable Housing Alliance's resources, because we do have, a lot of information that people can digest about, navigating our developer scene, but also being a part of the affordable housing solution.
So what are the biggest challenge do you see, or, based on from your guys' research, what are the most difficulties or challenges that issue for affordable housing will continue the way it is?
So we, as much as we love data, we also like to be optimists to help people see the flip side. If we do not do anything about affordable housing, in just 10 years, we will see increases in evictions, which we're already experiencing. We will see increases in homelessness. We are already experiencing that. And we will see more and more people who are working hard to support themselves being left behind. However, if we cut our affordable housing gap in half, we will see incremental increases in education, economic mobility, homeownership, and healthcare. For example, for healthcare, if we cut our housing gap in half, our life expectancy will go up by 5.5 years, which is like, wait, hold on. But on the homeownership front, if we cut our housing gap in half, over 6,000 additional Black renters will have enough in savings to make a down payment on their home. That's 6,000 more people like myself, my husband, my friends, who now have the opportunity to take advantage of this wealth building resource.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what message do you have for immigrants that have just arrived now?
Oh, I love that question, because when I think back, I did not know anything when I first came 12 years ago. Before I answer that, I also want to communicate that the immigrants, the new Americans who are coming to Columbus, are adding on to Columbus's prosperity. We know that in Columbus alone, our population has increased by over 115,000 people within the past 5 years. And within the past 5 years, neighborhoods like Northwest Columbus, like where we're at, to over 20% of that population growth has been because of foreign-born nationals. We look at Morse Road, very close to us as well. One of the main entrepreneurial strips in the nation, and it's because, in the States, and it's because of our immigrant communities who are building houses, building businesses, building grocery stores.
Absolutely.
The list goes on. So what that tells, what that should tell all of our Columbus neighbors is that immigrants are our neighbors, that we are part of the conversation, we are part of the solutions, we are part of the tax revenue that is making it possible for Columbus to flourish.
Absolutely.
And therefore, as a new immigrant coming to this country, see yourself as part of the solution first. I think that is a really groundbreaking way to see yourself as part of a bigger community. I also want to advise, somebody who's new to this country, especially if you're thinking about owning a business, having a stable place to call home for you and your family. Homeownership provides that. Now, it may take you some time, because if you're not coming with credit already, learning about the credit history, taking advantage of free housing counseling services, getting on bloom614.org so you can actually see the journey for yourself and then connect the dots. Okay, this is who I need to talk to first. And then after that, I talk to this person. That will help you navigate the process rather than trying to figure it out on your own, on top of settling into a new country, on top of, being away from home and all of that. So if I was aware of resources like this when I first came, I wouldn't have waited until 3 years ago to get a credit card. I would have got it as a college student, and then taken my time to build my credit. I would have asked, more intentional questions about, how can I just navigate the housing market? Because as much as I love the house that I have now and that it's stable and I can control how much money I'm paying every month towards my housing, I also love that if my husband and I were interested in starting a business, we now have an asset that we can leverage, that we now have a place for our child to grow up in and, flourish in, that we can use to pay for their college education whenever they're ready, So yeah, that's what I would advise is, yeah.
And switching on to Africa, right?
Yes,
we Africans, we do well outside Africa.
Yes.
Why is that?
That one is a whole other conversation. Honestly,
these are issues that I feel like that really exist in the heart of Africa, in each country, all those 54 countries, right?
Right.
So we have a hard time fixing that, but we have that drive when we go outside from Africa. We do well for ourselves, in because I guess that opportunity doesn't exist there. One can argue that, but I guess what's stopping that, making that happen?
Honestly, I always believe that we are the ones who create systems, so we are the ones who can change them. Right. And I find that, when I talk to many friends who are African immigrants, it's like the systems are the way they are back at home. We can't do anything about it. So they came here because they're like, the systems here are more accommodating. Yeah. But who made the systems here more accommodating? The people. So instead of we are the ones who are going to rebuild and build the systems that, take care of our healthcare, our education, our economic needs. It's not going to be some external savior. We are the savior.
We are the savior. We are the savior.
We are the savior. So that's, we could have a whole other podcast.
That's a whole different discussion. That's whole but I just kind of like to touch on that because I feel like, one question at a time, maybe we'll get to a solution, where that, people, I'm a soccer guy.
Okay, I can see clearly.
And in my days when I was in my prime playing soccer competitively, oftentimes that people used, my friends just kind of sort of tease me from Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Ethiopia. Like, when are we going to see Somalia in the World Cup or somewhere near to the African nation?
Good question.
I'm like, dude, we have a bigger problem than that.
I'm done.
Yeah, we have a bigger problem than that.
Even Ghana has disappointed.
Well, at least they made it. They did that. We on the other side, civil war is just tearing us apart. But now we're just as we're still learning how to walk, in my opinion.
That's fair. That's fair.
But and anybody that from Africa can relate to that. And I think we get into an age where we feel like, okay, well, enough is enough blaming other people. I think it's about time that we can sort of help one look internally and kind of sort of do the change that's necessary.
Exactly.
But I guess that will still take time. It will definitely not be our lifetime, but maybe our kids' lifetime, hopefully.
Well, I was gonna say, from what I've been reading back at home, there's a lot of change happening on the continent.
Okay.
And I can especially speak from the Ghana standpoint. The youth have had a bolder voice.
Okay.
Just in our recent elections alone, we've shown that we love our country and we want to take back control over how it's being governed, on making sure that we are meeting the needs of everyone. So I think that's across the board.
That's across the board. I think there's more youth, in generally speaking, in Africa, rather than the old heads. The old heads are the ones that are holding on to power for too long. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming through.
And again, invite me for another podcast about Africa. We can definitely have that conversation.
Absolutely. I try to hold roundtable discussion, so I'll definitely put you on there sometime and include you there as well.
Please.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. This has been such a delightful conversation, and hopefully this is just one of many. Hopefully we'll get to talk more in the future.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you so much.